Is the Republican Party finally getting it, or are they finally giving up? We'll talk about that next on Get Right with Lenny McAllister, starting right
now. Get Right with Lenny McAllister.
What you talking about, Willis?
The way we help bring back America and we build the bridges and bring people together is by making sure we hold everybody accountable in a 360 fashion. So let me close with this. Yes, there is a change that we can believe in, but it will never come from a politician or a government program. We got to move away from the American Idol soundbite nature of politics and back to the American statesman of humble servant leadership that we used to see in politics. It is time to reel in government. It is time to roll out the era of the new American citizen.
If we can continue to get some common sense governing from both sides of the aisle, finally get Americans through the recession, not just Wall Street.
We need people that can change the crisis that we're seeing, and that's why, as a proud Republican, I go through the jail ministry. I speak to the kids in the streets. So I'm never going to lay down being a Republican or being conservative, just as much as I'll never lay down being a proud African American.
I feel like a black Republican. Money I got coming in.
To the Thursday edition of Get Right with Lenny McAllister. I love talking to you. Appreciate all the feedback that I'm getting on Twitter and on Facebook and on text and on email. Here's the deal. If you want to get in touch with me via Facebook, very, very simple. 2 Walls, same name, LENNYMCALLISTER. Twitter, it's just a @sign, LENNYMCALLISTER. Now, some good news before we get into what I kicked off the podcast with. And again, I appreciate your feedback. Number one, if you're in the Pittsburgh area, starting tomorrow, Valentine's Day, and if you're standing in line at a restaurant or you're at home and you're going to watch a movie or whatever with the one you love, tune in 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Starting tomorrow, Valentine's Day, I will be hosting Night Talk, Get to the Point, for the next several weeks. We're trying out something new, going to see how the broadcast goes. It's a wonderful opportunity for me, especially as a native son here in the City of Champions. And yes, it is still the City of Champions, especially to a native Pittsburgher. But if you're here in Pittsburgh, if you're in the Western Pennsylvania region, want to see you tuning in to the Pittsburgh Cable News Channel, 8 o'clock, Friday night, Valentine's Day, Night Talk, Get to the Point. I will be hosting great conversation. We'll have some topics talking about unemployment, talking about Obamacare, talking about several other things that are going on, not just in Pittsburgh, but throughout the region, and not just throughout the region, but throughout the nation. So I'm looking forward to having you join us if you can. Of course, if you can't do it, we'll be doing some type of streaming of a segment or something so that we can always get your feedback and have you joining in the conversation. Now, with that said, we started off the podcast, and again, I always appreciate your feedback. Agree, disagree. Find me on Twitter, find me on Facebook. Those that can email me, please do so. Those that are unable to do any of those three things, just yell at your computer as you're listening. I'll get the message eventually. You see the Republicans going along with the debt ceiling increase that the Democrats and President Obama have been asking for. And I think that, one, it seems as though they get it. Now, granted, I'm, again, a fiscal hawk. I do think that we should watch spending. I do think that we have to get more people back to work. I do think that the national debt can be a threat to national sovereignty. So let's put that on the table right now. I do agree with those points. However, if you look at the last several years, we have to be honest with ourselves as fiscal conservatives, and even if you don't want to take a partisan position on this, just as Americans, every time the Tea Party element tries to take on this issue regarding the spending limit, regarding the national debt, regarding taxes, every single time over the last several years, they have overplayed their hand. The Tea Party element on Capitol Hill has overplayed their hand to a point where they have a win, they have concessions from the president, they have concessions for the Democrats, they are twisting their arm, they're making them say uncle, but they want them to say uncle, aunt, grandma, granddad, and cousin Jesse. And then, of course, the Democrats and the president just say no. Then they go to the American people and say, do you see what the Republicans are doing? They're holding the nation's good debt standing hostage. Do you see what they're doing? They're holding millions of workers whose jobs are going to be affected if the government shuts down, which we saw last fall, or if we have some type of credit rating hit, which we saw in 2011. They're holding us all hostage. These Republicans, this radical Tea Party element, just cannot be trusted. And guess what? It works. It works for the Democrats. It works for President Obama. And it has worked repeatedly. It's part of what helped him get reelected in 2012. That radical element. The only people that actually brought up the national debt over the last several years before the Tea Party movement were Ron Paul people that helped spark the Tea Party movement. Because they were talking about the national debt and the Federal Reserve before others did. But here's the problem. And this is what I think Republicans may have finally learned on Capitol Hill. Do not give the Democrats the opportunity to say it once again. Just take it completely out of their hands. Say, okay, you want to raise the debt ceiling? Go right ahead. Because you still got to own the unemployment rate. You still got to own the jobs reports. You still got to own Obamacare. And you still have to decipher all of this in less than 10 months. Because, as Paul Revere would paraphrase, the elections are coming, the elections are coming. Now, granted, President Obama is not on the ballot, but Obamacare is on the ballot this time around. Not in a referendum, but, if you will, in a disapproval referendum. People can't vote it off the books, but they sure as heck can vote out the senators and the congressmen that put this into law that said, trust us. They've given them 4 years of trust. Jobs haven't come back. This law has been a mess. And all they've had to run on is, well, we're not as bad as those radical Republicans. And they're not even using Republicans. They know it's Republicans, but they're basically saying those radical Tea Party extremists. Well, John Boehner and some of the elder senators on the Republican side of the aisle have taken that play right out of the playbook of the Democrats. Just ripped the page out. And I think that it was a smart move. Because truth of the matter is, you're not going to be able to fix the national debt in one fell swoop. And that's something that the Tea Party tried to do repeatedly. Agree, disagree, you know where to find me on social media. That has been the problem of the Tea Party element on Capitol Hill. For far too often, they are trying to do all of it all at once. When you have wins and you have the President of the United States saying uncle, and for those of you that are sitting out there saying, well, the president would never acquiesce to what the Tea Party element said on Capitol Hill. That's not true. You didn't even need to have them in office before he was capitulating to them. Because if you go back to December 2010, what transpired? With a lame duck Congress with a bunch of Democrats leaving Washington in a month, you got the extension of the Bush tax rates for 2 more years. Now, of course, President Obama turned right around, signed it into law, and then campaigned against it. But what was lost in all that was the fact that he knew he got his butt kicked. He knew his party got their butts kicked. In the midterm elections, he even admitted it. We hear the American people. We took a butt whooping, and we hear the American people, and signed those tax extensions into law. So you didn't even need the Tea Party element in office for it to work. Now you have them in office, and you see that the economy is not going in the right direction. Yes, the unemployment rate's coming down. Every now and then we have some good job numbers. Every now and then we did get over 200,000 jobs added in a month. But we faced an awful lot of 105,000 jobs, 110,000 jobs. We know what it was last week, 113,000 jobs. The month before that, 75,000 jobs. So we have been seeing that for a while. We have been seeing weak GDP growth for a while. So those things have been out there. So when the Tea Party came and said, Mr. President, we need to get the economy on track, business owners, business firms, investors are nervous about the spending. They want us to reel this back in. We've already faced a credit dip. What are we going to do? They were able to take his arm. I don't know if it was his left shooting arm or just the other one. But they were able to twist it behind his back. Look at Harry Reid and say, don't come closer. We'll twist it more. They were able to do that and get steps put into place. But time and time and time again, they went too far. Then they ended up losing. It's kind of like the kid that goes, trick-or-treating. You have all this Halloween candy, and there's one more house. Your bag's about to break. You've gone all over the place, but there's one more house. It's at the end of the street. No one generally goes down there. The lights are off. It's a big house, and they got a nice car in the driveway, but the lights are off. But you're thinking, or if you're that kid, you're thinking, hey, they look like they're rich. I know that's a far walk with a bag that's about to burst, and I got an awful lot of candy already, but man, if I can get to that house and they open up that door, they're loaded. I know they got good treats. I know it. So you waddle down the street. What ends up happening? It starts to rain. The bag gets soggier. Your candy just starts spilling all over the place. You grab it in your two hands. You run as fast as you can. You kick on the door, and either nobody answers the door or they answer the door and tell your kid, stop knocking on my door with your foot. Get out of here. I don't have any candy. You walk back home. You drop more candy. You get rained on. You walk in, your candy's soaking wet, and then you catch a cold for the next couple of days. So you can't even enjoy your candy. That's kind of what happens to the Tea Party when they go too far on these fiscal issues. They've already got good concessions from the president. We saw this at the end of 2012, even after a presidential election, when it came to the tax rates. We saw this in 2011 when it came to the debt ceiling. We saw this with the government shutdown in 2013. And finally, John Boehner said, enough. Enough is enough is enough. And the poor guy, if I see him chomp another cigarette, which you don't usually see on television, you got to see this behind the scenes. But that poor guy chomps on so many cigarettes. It's like, what's the name of the daggone cartoon character? Droopy? I'm trying to remember the poor dog, like Huckleberry Hound. It's a similar dog to that. And it's like watching, it's not Huckleberry Hound though. It's like seeing that dog, Droopy, with a cigarette in his mouth. It's like, daggone it. I can't win for losing. I think I'm going to win and then I don't win. It's almost like Charlie Brown kicking the football. It's there. It's big. It's round. You got good momentum. You know if you touch it, you're going to knock it through the goalpost, and something always pulls the ball at the last minute. And usually Lucy ends up being a fellow conservative. Doesn't end up being a Democrat. Lucy is a conservative for Charlie Brown kicking that football. So in this instance, it's good that they did not allow themselves as conservatives on Capitol Hill to once again run full speed, have good momentum, which, by the way, with the economy the way it is, and 2014 starting out the way it has, once again, Republicans have good momentum going into the election. Because although, and let's just be honest, although you may or may not agree with every single plan that they have from the 435 running for Congress and those that are running for re-election in the Senate. You may not agree with every single plan that they have, but when you're running against an incumbent that's a Democrat with this economy and this failure of Obamacare and this president that's losing approval points in the polls, it's a lot easier to win. It's a lot easier to win. And that's just the reality of politics. So for once, they were able to snatch this play out of the playbook of the Democrats and put it at the feet of the people that are, quite honestly, the people that didn't give you a budget out of the Senate for 5 years. The people that have been running the White House for 5 years. The people that gave you Obamacare exclusively. The exclusive owners. It's like, they're like Visa everywhere you want to be. The exclusive card of the 2014 Olympics, even though I don't know if they are or not, but you remember those commercials back in the day. It's kind of the same thing with Obamacare. The exclusive political party that brought you Obamacare. The exclusive political party that focused on Obamacare instead of focusing on the economy as a top priority in 2009, 2010. That needs to be the narrative, because you're not going to be able to fix the spending crisis in a holistic fashion between now in 2016. And somebody that is a legislator on Capitol Hill, or several people, I should say, it probably wasn't just one person making this decision, several people on Capitol Hill, on the Republican side of the aisle, in varying levels of leadership, finally not only figured it out, which they probably had it figured out before, but they not only figured it out, but they also got to a point in time where they were able to spread the good news of this. And I put good in quotation marks because the economy being bad is never good. It might be good politically if you're trying to win an office. It's not good in any other way. So please, when I say good in that context, see the air quotes. They were able to spread this gospel of playing smart politics. Don't be demonized again. Don't hold up government again. Get out of the way. Let those that created this own this. Now, you could sit there and talk about George Bush's wars all you want. That was going on 10 years ago now. In fact, going to Iraq was in 2003. It's 11 years ago. At some point in time, like now, you have to put the responsibility at the feet of the folks that are sleeping and working at the White House right now. And that starts with President Obama, 44th President of the United States, and his administration. Then you got to look at the Senate Majority Leader, who's been there for a hot second. That's Harry Reid, who finally gave you a budget a month ago? Been 5 years. Democrats controlled the House of Representatives, and they kept giving you CRs, continuing resolutions. Couldn't give you a real budget, created more instability, then baked that instability in with Obamacare that they pushed through in an extremely partisan way. They still don't focus on the economy, but they campaign on GM is alive and bin Laden is dead. Come on. You don't want to get in the way of some of that from a political standpoint. Now, if there's a way to get in the way of it and be successful to get the economy turned around rapidly. And that's the key. As I'm getting ready to wrap up, that's the key. People don't understand that if you can be successful immediately, then maybe you get in the way of the Democrats continuously doing these types of things. But if you can't change the tone or the results in a major way over the next 6 months, why not piecemeal solutions? Let the debt ceiling go ahead and go through. Get it through to 2015. We don't have to argue or talk about this for a year. Let's continue to focus on the negative impact of Obamacare on the business community, because that's what people need. Let's focus on the CBO report saying that 2.5 million Americans, or the equivalent of 2.5 million full-time jobs or full-time job hours, all of that 2.5 million times 40 a week, may disappear over the next 10 years, I should say, because of the last report saying that people will just choose to be underemployed or choose to be unemployed. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on 113,000 jobs added for the nation, knowing that we're still in a jobs deficit of over 4 million jobs since the Great Recession started, that nobody wants to talk about. Population's going up. Jobs are not coming back the way they need to, and the jobs that do come back are service-level jobs that may have limited hours, limited accessibility to advancement, which means a limited accessibility to the American dream. From an economic standpoint, I mean, there's other aspects to the American dream, but from an economic standpoint, can you advance based on your merit? Can you advance based on your hard work? And right now, the answer to that question in America is increasingly no. Why would you change the focus away from that and stick it back on being the radical extremists that hold up the government, that hold the full faith and credit of the United States hostage? Because you know that's the rhetoric. You know that's the language. How do you know? Because you can read it in every daggone major newspaper in the United States because it's been printed for the last 3 years. It's a smart move by the Republicans to not get in the way. It's a smart political move. It's a smart civic move because at least this is behind us. But as I close, I caution us to not think that this is just another sign of bipartisanship. The budget agreement was. I think it was a failure not to get unemployment insurance continued. And you saw the vote from the Senate on that, and that was a failure. But at least the budget agreement was bipartisan. This debt ceiling agreement is not necessarily bipartisan. Look at the final vote in the Senate. It was a shell game. It was a political game to make sure that the political focus is where it actually should be, on President Obama and the Democrats and their failure to get this economy going over the next several months, and failing to do it over the last several years should be what is the primary issue, quote unquote, on the ballot in November. And anything otherwise is just a poor political play by a political party that cannot continue to have poor political plays. I wish I was a little bit more optimistic about the debt ceiling resolution, but I'm not. What's your take? You know where to find me on Twitter. LennyMcAllister. Facebook, 2 walls, same name. I'm going to get out of here to start getting ready for Friday. Of course, I'll be doing a lot more prep Friday than Thursday. In the meanwhile, you know I love you. You know I enjoy having you here with me on the podcast every day. Spread the word and spread your opinion. I'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful Thursday. TCNGB. Take care and God bless. Peace.